Please give it up for my friend, Dr. John Butler.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, what I want to talk about today was actually the interaction between smart cities, doing things, and the movement of entrepreneurs. I was talking to our keynote speaker last night, and we were talking about what does it mean to have a smart city, okay? Why are we doing all of this? I've worked in cities and I would say, why do you want a smart city? Well, we just want a smart city. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna talk about the whole idea that we now have the data to mathematically measure not only the relationship between the Internet of Things, but how to hook people themselves to the Internet of Things. And what I want to do is show how connecting people to the Internet of Things continue to enhance the greatest city in the world during the last 40 years, Austin, Texas, okay? Now the whole idea that I talk about is social physics. We'll spend some time on the theory. Now I'm not going to charge tuition. It won't be much. Now I went to grad school at Northwestern, that's frightening. Texas is all right, okay? But the whole idea is, look, as a professor, I'm interested in writing equations about things. I'm interested in understanding what people do, how they move around, and in this case, the relationship between how they move around and smart cities. Let me just spend some time on the idea of social physics. It was really developed by Auguste Comte in the 1840s. My colleague at IC Square Nobel Prize was Pergogene. We talked a lot about how the line between the natural sciences and the social sciences were declining. Those lines are declining because we now have the data to do certain kind of things, but we have to be careful. We know we will always have financial crisis because no matter how we create the mathematical models on Wall Street, people still get involved. Physics is physics, okay? But on the other hand, we know that in physics, right, in finance, the models are kind of going against God's idea, and in physics, they're playing against God, and he doesn't change his laws very often. So our question then is that, look, here's the deal. What we need to understand is what we're doing here, okay? We have created the space and the flows and the material support of time-sharing social practices that work through different kinds of flows, okay? So I'm just kind of, you have to connect your mind if you say, how do you write the equation for the movement of people, okay? We begin to understand that ideas move people just as energy move products, okay? What we say it is it's axiom that time and space cannot be understood independently of social action. Now we knew that for a long time, but we could not measure it for a long time, okay? So what we're doing is, when we look at the connectivity of the Internet of Things, space is crystallized time for practices which flow through the space of flows. Okay? So you got to imagine with me, that I can write an equation right now without talking to you and tell you everywhere you've been and what people are doing. I must tell you that marketing now is becoming physics. I must tell you that the physicists have almost taken over writing the equations for Wall Street, okay? So we look at all of this stuff, and we know that, look, place is very, very important, okay? But the Internet of Things, and especially smart cities themselves, okay, changes everything, okay? Space would be important, but the space of flows and timeless time are the material foundations of our times. That just simply means that we're connected in so many ways through all of the Internet of Things, or the communications of computers, ITCs, okay? Place will not continue to exist, okay? But just as railroads once defined economic regions, the technological infrastructure that constitutes the network defines the new space. So we've got to sit up here, we've got all this great connectivity in cities, okay? And what's the goal, okay? We know that cities will provide the best resource for the enhancements of intellectual growth. But the city is more a process now than a specific place. It's a process now. It's a process, okay? As I've heard people talk today, and of course in Austin we like to call it a region. We call it the whole region, San Marcos included in the region. So it becomes a process of advancement and a process of networks and linkages, okay? So, to kind of do this, you take a look at this, right? Place is still there. The material foundation, which is the smart city, is still there, okay? But the space of flows is going across geographic distances. That just simply means you can text everywhere. That means I can tell you where you've been in the last 6 months, 3 years, 4 years. I don't need to ask you where you're going. So therefore, cities will be key, okay? We know that cities now will be command cities of the world economy, okay? They will continue to produce, but my gosh, we can measure everything through social physics, okay? Now, there are lots of examples about the financial services. We know about how things flow very, very fast through the financial services, but ideas are flowing now too. They're causing revolutions. They're causing different kinds of attitudes to take place almost instantaneously. So therefore, we've got a great economy, and let's go to the greatest city in the world, which we call the Technopolis. Now, kind of review it here. What we're saying here is that we wanted to create a city that was very, very different. Austin itself, before I got there, it was a little sleepy town, but when I got there, look what happened. Okay? Now you got to realize that this was a planned city, okay? This was a planned city where we looked around and looked at what was happening in smart cities, and San Francisco was our model. Okay? This is some data from my good buddy who wrote a book called Social Physics. He's an MIT guy, Pentland. He said, look, I don't need to talk to you. I can use the Internet of Things and tell you exactly what's happening in San Francisco. Okay? I can tell you where people shop. I can tell you how long they stay in stores. I can tell you where they go, who their boyfriends are, who their girlfriends are. I got a friend in Houston with a company, and had the guy on the stand and said, where were you on July the 5th? I was in New Orleans, Louisiana. No, you were at your girlfriend's house in Covington, Louisiana. That's where you were. We know everything. It's called social physics, okay? So my question then is this. What about the greatest city in the world? So now that you have the background very, very quickly, it's just the ability to write equations about the movement of people. Our fundamental issue in Austin was this. How do you draw entrepreneurs to the city? We were getting our butt kicked by San Francisco, by 128 in Boston, and we said, we need to get into the game, okay? We need to understand we're going to create a technopolis. What infrastructure do we have? You certainly could not fly to a lot of places. So we all got together and said, what we're going to do, we're going to create all of the infrastructure that we have talked about that would draw people to Austin, Texas, and look at all of the digitalization among them, state government, federal government, emerging companies, and ask one thing. How can we quantify that to draw entrepreneurs to Austin? Now, remember, the emphasis is on entrepreneurs, okay? So there are lots of smart cities that's just smart. There's a lot of smart people that's just smart. What we're interested in a do city, right, where we connect the idea of moving people to Austin, entrepreneurs to Austin, by using the Internet of Things and smart cities, okay? Now, within a short period of time, 20 years, Austin became #1 in everything. Case closed. Okay? Okay, we have created more wealth in Austin in the last 20 years than almost any city in America. We've gone to a city that had only opportunities in education institution and state government. It was the idea that we could understand, and this is the data, this is the research, we could understand how Michael Dell came to be, came through IC Square, George Kosmetsky. Had lunch with my good friend John Mackey, founded Whole Foods, who was a philosophy major. Jim Tressard, National Instruments, and all of the great people who came to Austin. Okay, let's look what we're going to do here. Okay, we use big data to do this. Just like you saw the topics on San Francisco, we need big data. We need the idea, how were the networks of the smart cities? All right, and we're going to come off our smart grid Eckhart, right? I mean, we said, well, how can we commercialize this for the entrepreneurs coming to Austin? What do we need to do? All right, there's no tuition, so I'm not going to explain this. But what do we need to do to understand which forces a person to come to a city, okay? And basically, I use Hook's idea. This is a person in a certain location who would start a business in Austin, Texas, and I want to know exactly, let me get here. I want to know exactly what brings that person here, okay? I'm an academician, so I go by propositions. Now, let me just explain what we're talking about, Hook's law here. The things that's drawing people to Austin is the smartness of things. Entrepreneurs want to be interconnected in lots of ways because it is the networks that are important. So we would brag about how Austin is networked, not only in terms of the Internet of Things, but what's happening in coffee shops. But when you look at the tweets, we write equations for tweets. We look at the tweets around this area. Tweeting is more, it's lots of tweets around creating companies, around wealth creation, all right? So we can actually write the equations and look at how those tweets impact the Internet of Things of what we do, okay? Moving very fast here. So this is the model right here, okay? I won't go through the sample, but basically what we did, all right, we want to ask exactly how in the world and where are these entrepreneurs going, okay? At the end of the day, this is a movement of entrepreneurs from the metropolitan area of Oregon to metropolitan where the companies were launched, okay? The burnt orange and white is the Austin region, okay? And this is from international San Francisco, from international Austin. We're doing pretty good. Okay? Now we're asking, remember in the equations as you shall see, we have all of the Internet of Things. We have all of the networks involved. Here's another slide. This is where they moved to launch their startups. San Francisco, number 1, Austin, number 2, New York City, hanging in there, which is surprising to me, by the way. All right, and then we said, what's causing all of this stuff? Well, we looked at the total number of rounds in the city. And remember, if you look at the connectivity, when you write those equations, it's just amazing how people are connected. And then we looked at the average amount raised. Okay. Now look at Austin, Texas. See, people will get their money from one place and then move to Austin, Texas. You know why? 1 minute. Because the Internet of Things are so important. Now, here's the big deal. Here's the big deal. All right? I'm going to walk over here and look at this. If you look at the Internet of Things, okay, we have all of these things that's controlled in terms of asking one question. If you start a company and didn't move in your region, if you immediately moved and started a company, if you moved a company, found a job, and started a company, what's the most important variable? What's hugging the regression line? The tie density, which is the Internet of Things. When you move, it drops. And then, of course, it rebuilds when you reestablish yourself. Now, very quickly, what is this telling me? Okay. This is telling me that smart cities have a purpose other than just the connectivity of the Internet of Things. What we have done in Austin, Texas, is to use the whole idea of ERCOT, our smart grid, to actually bring entrepreneurs to Austin, Texas, and kick everybody's butt except Silicon Valley, and created one of the most dynamic cities in the whole world. Thank you very much.